brothers at arms. The streets of LaFollette have been soaked in blood of the town's residents several times over the years. Perhaps none was more wild, unexpected, and reckless than a pistol duel between two brothers on a crowded street in the heart of the city of LaFollette on November 21st, 1921. It was a Saturday night in LaFollette, the streets filled with people. The city election had been held that day, and the polls had just closed. Many were gathered at what was known as the Central Business District of LaFollette, discussing the election. Businesses flourished along Central Avenue in Tennessee. A new modern hotel, the Adro, was under construction on the east corner and would open some months after the shootout. George Loy of LaFollette was standing in front of Riggs Drugs, which was at that time located near the corner of Tennessee Avenue and Central Avenue in downtown LaFollette. He was speaking with Squire H. Bowman. Suddenly, George started shooting at his brother, Ike Loy, who had arrived at the scene. Ike returned fire, causing people to flee in panic, and the two brothers lay bleeding in the street. The smell of gunpowder filled the chilly November air. Squire Bowman had this to say from his up-close perspective of the wild event. "I'd just been shaking hands with George. He had been telling me of his domestic and financial troubles, having just gotten a divorce. That's when Ike Loy came walking down the street. He was between Mrs. Loy and Mr. Ketron. When George saw his brother, he whirled around, drew a pistol from his overcoat pocket, and extended his arm over Mrs. Ike Loy's arm and began pulling the trigger. I don't believe that they could have been more than 5 feet apart during that shooting. George fired 4 shots, and Ike got off 7 or 8. George had a revolver. I think it was a .38 Special, and Ike must have had an automatic. That's how it seemed to me. George was killed almost instantly, and Ike was shot in the head and stomach. The two brothers weren't the only people struck in that shootout on Central Avenue. J.R. Ketron, manager of the Tennessee Electric Power Company, had a bullet hole through his shirt. Mrs. Ike Loy had powder burns from being so close to the back and forth gunfire. J.W. Blankenship was struck in the leg and suffered a grazing wound. Elmer Irwin also had a bullet hole through the sleeve of his sweater. It's a miracle that only the Loy brothers were seriously wounded. Ike Loy was loaded onto an ambulance for transport to Knoxville. Before the ambulance could pull away, he recognized Arthur Cole and reportedly whispered, "Goodbye, Arthur." No doubt, like Loy, he thought he was living his final moments. The recently divorced wife of George Loy, Mrs. Minnie Lee Loy, wrote a letter to shine light on the reason for the duel that erupted between the brothers. On November 5th, my husband George W. Loy sent me into the workshop of his brother Ike to warm. I was in the shop about 3 minutes when George came in the back door, and he claimed that he came back after a key. I went back out with him, and after we had reached the street, he claimed I had been in the arms of Ike when he entered the back door. On the contrary, I was standing near the stove, and Ike Loy was so busy he hardly spoke a word to me. George told me then that he was going to divorce me and sue his brother into financial ruin. He then threatened to kill me if I denied his charges or cross-filed his divorce suit. I'm writing this letter to clear the good name of Mr. Ike Loy. At the time of the shooting and the following day, Ike wasn't expected to live. However, a week later, reports said that he was expected to recover. He did recover and became involved as a bail bondsman for a killer who went on the run after a 1932 slaying in LaFollette. We will have that sordid tale in a future Lawless LaFollette. And that's the way history recorded it in your Lawless LaFollette.